Hi everyone, welcome to End of the World Weekly. Let me tell you how this show works. I'm Newsbot 29000. I'm a robot from the post-apocalyptic future. I've been programmed to send these broadcasts into the past in hopes that you Earth humans can avoid all the calamities that led to the end of the world. Okay, got it? Good. So let me tell you about some of your current events and how they spiral out of control and bring about the apocalypse. On Sunday, Trump's senior advisor, Kellyanne Conway, said Trump would not release his tax returns. On Monday, she changed her story to Trump is under audit and will not release his returns until that was completed. Just by the way she worded that, you could tell Trump never had any intention of releasing his returns. Otherwise, she would have said something like, after the audit is complete, he will release his returns. None of that negative conditional bullshit. You could start to see how annoyed this issue made the Trump administration. Being accused of the same thing over and over again, being asked the same questions every day. I wonder if there was anyone out there that they could ask for advice on how to deal with a constant nuisance like that. On Monday, Trump signed an executive order banning aid to foreign organizations that offer abortions. Fun alternative fact, at some point in their lives, 3 of the men who helped draft the bill, pictured here, forced a partner to receive an abortion. Which brings us to our first installment of our new segment, Alternative Facts of the Week. In our inaugural segment, we have some good ones. Alternative fact number 1. Donald Trump's dying words were, "Daddy! Daddy! I put our name on the tall building, Daddy! Do you love me now, Daddy?" Alternative fact number 2. A parody Twitter account pretending to be Vice President Mike Pence tweeted that half of the marchers in the Women's March were Trump supporters. That part's true, that actually happened. The alternative fact is that the real Mike Pence saw the message by the fake Mike Pence and thought, well, I don't remember writing that, but since I did, it must be true. Alternative fact number 3. 3 Doors Down rocked Donald Trump's rocking inauguration so rocking hard that everyone thought it was the rocking year 2000 again. Alternative fact number 4. Half of all Trump voters were former contestants on The Apprentice. Alternative fact number 5. Trump's hands were so big. How big were they? Donald Trump's hands were so big that he was able to sign away women's reproductive rights and foreigners' dreams of a better life in America by signing a single bill. That does it for this week's segment of Alternative Facts of the Week. Post your alternative facts in the comments, and maybe we'll talk about them next week. In a meeting with congressional leaders Monday night, Trump offered no proof, but claimed that 3 to 5 million illegal votes cost him the popular vote, up from his 2 to 3 million illegal votes claim from only a month ago. The non-existent voters must have continued to cast their illegal non-existent votes for the past month for the numbers to increase that much. Tuesday, Press Secretary Sean Spicer doubled down on Trump's claims, citing evidence and studies. Later that night, when Spicer's parents asked him what he did that day, he said stuff. When his father pressed him for more details, he replied with things, before running to his room and slamming the door shut behind him. Gosh! South Carolina Republican Senator Lindsey Graham slammed Trump on Tuesday, saying, if the President of the United States is claiming that 3.5 million people voted illegally, that shakes confidence in our democracy, which is exactly what Trump was trying to do. All of his attacks on the media while claiming to be a victim, lying about how many people attended his inauguration, declaring millions of fake votes cost him the popular vote. It was all to trick people into thinking he was more well-liked than he actually was in an attempt to consolidate more power for himself. Greg Phillips was a man with a plan. That plan was to stroke Trump's ego until the baby king gave him a bunch of money. And his plan was well underway on Friday when CNN invited him on their morning news program to defend his claim that 3 million people voted illegally. In his interview, Phillips claimed that he was certain millions of votes were cast illegally, but his staff didn't have the resources to prove he was right. Trump saw the news segment and tweeted his support for the conspiracy theorist, and it wasn't long before he was fully funding Phillips's investigation into voter fraud. What was strange about Phillips's investigation, though, was that it mostly focused on Hawaii and other tropical paradises that weren't even part of the United States. Funnier still, all of Phillips's fellow inspectors seemed to be bikini models. Estimates for last Saturday's Women's March put the number of participants in D.C. at around 500,000, double the number of people that went to Trump's inauguration. It's a good thing Trump wasn't extremely petty and childish, otherwise he would have spent the whole next week trying to convince people the teeny tiny crowd he drew was actually historically large, maybe even the biggest crowd ever assembled. It's just a good thing that King Baby knew it wasn't the size of the crowd that mattered, it was how you used it. And Donald Trump had a lot of experience using people, that's for sure. On Tuesday, a Manhattan doctor received a 2-year prison sentence for sexually assaulting 4 women. The doctor would sedate his patients and then grope them while masturbating. Classic serial killer behavior. The light sentence was because the white doctor told the white judge that he was real super sorries, and for some reason the judge believed him. But you want to know how you could tell that he wasn't sorry? Because he only admitted doing it to the 4 victims who accused him of doing it. This guy was a doctor for decades. Do you really think that he got caught 100% of the time? Who knows how many women this guy abused over the years? 1 year later, the doctor was released early for good behavior, and it didn't take long before he was escalating his crimes. A lot of bodies were found across New York City with surgically precise cuts made into them. This guy would slice into his victims' buttholes so he could spread them super wide and then poop down their butts. What a sicko! Investigators nicknamed him the Butthole Pooper. In 2015, a Texas teacher had sex with her teenage student. The student then blackmailed the teacher in exchange for his silence, extorting around $28,000 from her. Wow, that's way too much money for someone so young. What would a 14-year-old even do with that much money? Oh, he spent it all on drugs and alcohol? Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. That's exactly what a 14-year-old would do with 30 grand. On Tuesday, the teacher was arrested and charged with sexual assault, and the student was disciplined for not being able to keep his mouth shut. On Wednesday, Republican Nebraska State Senator Bill Kintner stepped down after posting offensive tweets about the Women's March. Essentially, he called 3 women unattractive. Apparently, this 56-year-old heavyset man was an authority on beauty. In his younger years, he did the Midwest runway circuit, competing for the title of Prince Pattycake, the softest lad in the land. He got runner-up 2 years in a row, but sadly, he was never able to come away with the crown. His biggest contribution to the history books was for having cybersex with someone while using a state-owned computer, being recorded while jerking off, getting blackmailed by his cybersex partner so she wouldn't release the video, and then admitting to the whole thing so they wouldn't have to pay her ransom. On Wednesday, one of Trump's senior advisors, Stephen Bannon, said the media better keep its mouth shut, or he knows someone that will shut it for him. Shia LaBeouf set up a performance art exhibit outside the Museum of the Moving Image in response to Trump's presidency. He planned on live streaming museum visitors chanting, "He will not divide us." But as this was the age of Trump, of course Nazis showed up and tried to hijack the video. Shia actually got arrested on Wednesday for shoving a Nazi after the Nazi told the Jewish actor that Hitler did nothing wrong. Police released him a short time later when they confirmed that the person he shoved was in fact a proud Nazi, and nobody really cares about those dickheads. Amy Blagojevich, daughter of former Illinois Governor Rod Blagojevich, who was arrested and sentenced to 14 years in prison for corruption, wrote a heartfelt letter to President Obama asking for clemency for her father's 14-year prison term. After Obama denied the request, along with 14,000 other requests made by inmates to get out of jail early, Ms. Blagojevich wrote a less heartfelt letter to Obama, calling the ex-president spineless and describing his supporters as delusional. She went on to say her father was an innocent man that did nothing wrong, but a federal judge and grand jury saw things differently. Back in August 2016, her father was resentenced to 14 years. At that sentencing, Amy cried out, "You've stolen my childhood," inside the courtroom, which was clearly not the case based on all the childish name-calling the 20-year-old was engaging in. Thursday morning, Americans woke up to discover the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists had moved its doomsday clock 30 seconds closer to midnight. Everyone assumed the countdown must have moved because of Trump, but it was actually because of a nasty fart one of the scientists had in the lab and wouldn't admit to. All of the other scientists jumped to conclusions and thought it must be some new type of chemical warfare being waged against intellectuals. Well, that does it for this episode of End of the World Weekly. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed the show. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We also have a Twitter account. You can follow us there. And if you leave any comments on our YouTube page or tweet at us, we will include those comments in the next episode on the scrolling bar at the bottom. Thanks again for watching, and we hope to see you again next week. Bye!
Delicious.